Welcome to this ConedaKOR tutorial. In this video, we will show you how to create your own entity types, entities and relations in an empty ConedaKOR instance. The easiest way to get to know the functions of ConedaKOR is to create a sample project with your own data. This way you can get an idea of whether your data, your research questions and the software are a good fit. In the following, we built a simple database with a few entries. The database shall contain information about some paintings, including the names of the painters and the museum rooms where they are exhibited. There shall also be at least one image for each of the artworks. We also have some further information on these images which we want to put in the database. When you open your ConedaKOR instance for the first time, you will not yet find any data. And before you create the first record, you need to decide what kind of entities are in your data and how the entities interrelate with each other. So in ConedaKOR, you first define different entity types to which you then later assign your individual data. An entity type could be, for example, work, if it is art historical data. A work can be a painting of which you create different views as images in your database. The different views are in a separate entity type as medium. In the entity type work, you can also store any other kind of artwork, like for example a sculpture. We create person as a further entity type in order to be able to include the artists of the artworks and also the authors of the associated literature. If you want to include literature, you should also define a separate entity type for it, that holds the titles, pages and other additional information. In our example, we want to record paintings in an exhibition and the hanging in different rooms is of value to us. Therefore, we create 3 different entity types, one for the works, one for the rooms, and one for the persons, in order to be able to record the artists. To create your entity types, click on Entity Types under Create on the left side of the page. Then click on the little plus sign in the upper right corner. Now you can fill in your information. For now, we will only fill in the basics that you definitely need in order to create your entities correctly. You must assign a name for your entity type and its plural form. Then you need to define how the dating information should be called for this entity type. When you have an artwork like us, date will be fine. But if you create an entity type for person, you'll need another name like biographical dates or life dates. And finally, you need to assign a label for your entity name, which defines how the entity will be called. For an artwork, title is a good name. For a person, name is sufficient. Then click on Save. We repeat the steps for our other entity types. By creating the entity types and linking them with the help of relations, you have begun to define the structure of a graph with nodes, which are the entities, and edges, which are the relations. On the one hand, a graph allows you to search intuitively and exploratively in the data. For example, this might be advantageous in a teaching context, where you want the users to familiarize themselves with the contents of your database. On the other hand, as the graph structure is flexible, you can adapt the database all along your research project by adding and modifying the entity types, the relations and their properties. Now let's create some exemplary entities and link them together. To create an entity, you click on the drop-down menu for Create Entity and choose the entity type you want to create your entity in. Then you fill in your information. You can add further properties to your entity, like measurements for the artworks or biographical data and even links. We will fast forward the process for the next few entries. After the creation of some entities, you can link them via your relations with the other entities. In order to do so, click on the little plus next to Relationships in your entity entry. Then you can choose the relation and the entity you want to link it with. If you want to include media, such as images, you have to first upload them to your database like so. Then you can form a relation with your artwork like you did with the other entities. ConedaKOR allows to apply controlled vocabularies and the linkage to knowledge bases such as Wikidata. This is explained in another video. For more information on creating and linking entities, please have a look at our user documentation. Thank you for watching this ConedaKOR tutorial.